My name is Carolyn Delaney. I'm the founder and CEO here at Journey Enterprises. We're a media company on a mission to make recovery from addiction visible because it's important. It saves lives. There are over 26 million of us in recovery, and we want those who are still sick and suffering to know that there's a path for them. There's millions of us here on the other side of active addiction, and that it's probable that people can and do recover. Our videos share personal, intimate stories of what people's journeys were like, going from what it was like to what happened to what it's like now, in an effort to let people know that we're here, we care, and that there's a way out. Visible recovery saves lives, and we want the world to know that. So if you have a story about recovery and would like to share it, please contact me, Carolyn at recovery-journey.com. I hope you enjoy our videos. Have a great day.
Oh, it was a long, long road for me. I started drinking at age 13. I loved it right away because I loved how it let me escape all the feelings I was feeling, helped me get out of, helped me feel uninhibited, not self-conscious as a teenager, all those things that most teenagers experience. And then it just continued straight through into, I would say, into my 40s. So it was a long stretch. And it progressively got worse, which is pretty typical. Looking back over it, when I was in it, I wasn't aware. I didn't have the self-awareness sense. I wasn't aware of how bad it was. I wasn't aware of the things that I am today on how bad it was and how out of control my life was, even though on the outside it looked like everything was pretty good. I was married, I had 2 kids, I had a dog, I had the house, I had all the things, I had the job before I had the kids. So on the outside it looked really, really good. And people told me that, people didn't believe that I had a problem when I finally told them that I did. So there was this double life, there was this internal chaos that I felt, this disconnect. Didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I wanted. All I knew was there was this constant unease. Now I can articulate that. Now I can identify that. But all I felt at that time was just sort of this confusion. I felt confused a lot and unhappy. Yeah, so that was at the end. And then that last night, I'll never forget it. I had gone out to the grocery store and bought the biggest bottle of pre-mixed margarita mix that I could find, the big jug with the handle. And I drank all but about a quarter of it that night. And I woke up in the morning feeling really sick and really full of self-loathing, hating myself because I did it yet again, told myself I wasn't going to do it, wasn't going to drink tonight, and I did again. And, for me, it was a God moment because I hadn't been able to stop in now I was 55, started at 13. So with stopping for just 4 years, but I drank through the whole bringing up my kids, I was one of those functioning alcoholics, as they say. But at this moment, somehow I knew that this was it. I had to be done. I went over to the refrigerator, opened the door, took out what was left, and poured it down the drain. And as I was pouring it down the drain, the tears were just, there's like the floodgates opened. I was crying and yelling out loud in my apartment by myself, I hate you, I hate you, I hate you, as I was pouring the alcohol down the drain. And looking back, I don't know if I was saying I hate you to the alcohol, if I was saying I hate you to myself. I hate you to God. I don't know what it was. You know, I just was so angry and lost and confused and just done, spent. There was nothing left. I found the women's meeting. I went to it. I was scared to walk in. I was so scared. I remember I was shaking. And I walked in and sat down, and it was a pretty big meeting, sort of a horseshoe of tables of women. And for the first time in my life, I said, "Hi, I'm Kathy, and I'm an alcoholic." And when I say good, really it's that I have this serenity, I have a calm, a peace. You know, as we started this interview, you asked me how I was doing, and we're in the, you know, I don't know if we're in the middle or where we're at, but we're in this pandemic, you know, this coronavirus, COVID-19 place that we've never seen before. And yet I feel at ease. Not that I'm, you know, I'm aware of what's going on. And I guess what it is for me is that I know that it's out of my control. All I can do is what is being suggested to do, to take care of myself and stay home and all of that. So I'm doing that, and I'm seeing it as a real time to strengthen my meditation practice, to connect with family and friends, maybe even more than I usually do, to be grateful for what I have. I'm grateful that I'm healthy right now. I'm grateful that I'm sober so that I can be aware of all this, that with this, all this fear that's going on, that I don't have to run to the refrigerator and pull out that bottle. And that's what's gonna, you know, calm me down. I can exercise. I can listen to inspirational podcasts and YouTubes, and I have some good books that I'm reading. It's a chance to learn and to stay connected with people, because that is what I know today, is that I need to stay connected. I need other people. I need positive people in my life, people I care about, and people who I know care about me, and to be of service. Even in this time right now, I'm finding ways to do that.
I was adopted from the Home for Little Wanderers orphanage in Belfast, which is still there. And I was under a year old. I was a baby when my mother and father adopted me. And I know that a lot of adoptees share kind of that same feeling of just, it doesn't matter how much your family, your adoptive family loves you. There's just something that I always felt, I didn't fit. And it wasn't lack of love, that's for sure. But I never felt like I fit anywhere. Throughout this process of recovery, if anyone told me I would be a Reiki practitioner now, and do a hands-on and being the hugger that I am, I would have told them they were crazy. But it's just amazing how things turn around. I left home when I was about 14, and it was around my 15th birthday. And I believe that the reason why my parents let me go is they felt it was a phase, and that I would get it out of my system and I would be back. And for some reason, it wasn't like a gradual smoking pot and drinking beer in the woods thing. It was just a quick and fast dive right into it. And I said, if you try to find me or bring me home, I'll run away and you'll never see me again. So I kind of, like my mom said, if I knew what I know now, I would have grabbed you by the seat of the pants and had you in a program or a facility so quick. But I think that she feared that I would run away and they'd never see me again. So that's kind of how it started. I did, however, end up pregnant with my son, who is 35 now. And I had also I had quit school, obviously, because, you know, the truant officer can only come find you so many times. And my mother said, look, I'm working. My mother, of all things, was a teacher and an assistant principal. So it broke her heart that I was so opposite of whatever little picture she had in her mind of what a little girl was going to be like. I was none of those things. And I did ask her at one point, I said, Mom, I said, did you ever feel like the devil drove you to the wrong crib when you picked me? And she said, never. She said, but I asked myself many times, what in God's name am I supposed to be learning from this child? And I said, well, what did you come up with? And she said, Amy, you taught me not to be judgmental. When I found out I was pregnant with my son, I quit everything and I got my GED, and I've always been a caretaker type. So I really wanted to be a nurse's aide, and that seemed like a really good field for me to get into. And so I had that job as kind of a fallback. So when I was pregnant, I just worked all the time to keep myself busy, and I quit everything except I still smoke cigarettes. But I had quit everything. And it's interesting how you can quit something for someone else, but we can't do it for ourselves. But that was what brought me to that stage of being clean. It was very, very important to me to be a good mom, because being adopted, I'm like, this is my flesh and blood, and this is something that I don't take for granted. And but my addiction still, and after a year or so, came back into play. And I ended up my first rehab when my son was 2. I was in 8 different rehabs and halfway houses. I guess the final straw was I had gotten arrested with morphine sulfate. This was the year that I lost my son. It was 1991. And I had no one to blame but myself. And he was going to California to live with strangers. And I felt like I lost the best part of me. But it was a blessing in disguise, because if my mother had continued to enable me and take care of him, I surely would have ended up in Wyndham for 4 years, and God knows what would have happened to my son. I walked across the street to the beach, and it was desolate. I was the only one there. It's October, it's dark, it's gray, and never had I felt so alone. And I just wanted to be swallowed up by the ocean. I said, if there is such thing as a higher power or a guardian angel, I said, please give me a sign, because I can't do this, and I don't want to be here. And I was either going to take myself out and do it right this time, or I was going to get clean. I didn't know what I was going to do. But I asked for help wholeheartedly and surrendered. And then I just kind of like plopped down in the sand. And I sat there for a bit. And then when I went to get up, and when I pushed myself up out of the sand, I felt something on my fingers. And it was 2 sand dollars that I swear weren't there when I sat down. And I thought, there's my sign. And I said, Mom, can you come get me? And she said, Amy, why should I come get you? What makes this time any different? I said, I'm in the police station, and I asked them to come pick me up and to keep me safe until I could get a ride out of town. And she said, I'm on my way. So that was the beginning of turning everything around. And
what year was that?
1991.
That was 91. Oh, so it was right after you lost your son.
Yeah. So when I got to her house, she said, you better call around and find yourself a bed, because you're not going to stay here. I ended up in Acadia for 30 some odd days, and then they suggested that because I was on probation and because of my history, that this was not going to be a 21 or 30-day thing. This was going to be 6 months to a year in a halfway house. And I was not really on board with that, because I'm like, there's nothing they can tell me I don't already know. I've been to rehab 8 times. I've been into halfway houses already. I know, and it was probably the third month in that I realized that maybe I do need to be here. With everyone around me asking, why are you here? What? And anyway, I said, sometimes I'm here because I need to stay safe from a relationship that I can't go back to. Sometimes I'm here because I want my son back. Sometimes I'm here because I want to get my life back. And I'm like, I don't know why I'm here. I just know that I need to be here and I want my son back. And you're like, good answer. I graduated it was over 6 months, but not quite 7. And I graduated from there. And my mom's like, I'm going to come up for your graduation. 2 years later, I got my son back and I was working as a nurse's aide. I went through they had a program when you were in the halfway house where you could go to adult ed. And I wasn't sure I could do it, even though I knew what I was doing. A lot had changed. There was a lot more paperwork involved, and it wasn't just taking care of patients. So that was very challenging for me, and remembering a lot of the vocabulary, but I got through it. And I was so proud of myself. And I got my son back, and my life was good. I had a few car accidents, and I've had like a reverse curvature in the back of my neck. So that was getting really bad. And I was getting cortisone shots for the longest time. And I ended up getting narcotic pain meds, which triggered a whole other downward spiral for me. And because I had been clean and doing so well for so long, I kept it a secret because I didn't want anybody to worry about me and so that created a big problem. And that was what led me to start self-medicating. And then I finally knew I gotta own this, and I have to be responsible, and I gotta do something. And I tried many times, but methadone maintenance had never been offered to me. And I wish it had a long time ago, because it really would have saved me a whole lot of heartache and my family's. But it gave me my life back like never before. I actually had counselors that I could be honest with, that understood where I was coming from. Methadone is a treatment that helps me and people like me help ourselves.
Hello, my name is Margo Walsh, and I'm from Cumberland, Maine, and I have a business in Portland, Maine called MaineWorks. I am humbled by the experience that brought me to the opportunity of starting my own business. And like any other woman in recovery, it's a long story, and it's a difficult story, but through that story, I've gained a lot of strength and a lot of great friends and a lot of life experience that I would have never had the courage to face without my own recovery story. I was a sugar addict as a child. And so why I say that so forthright is because my life was really about taking money from places that wasn't my money, sneaking off and buying as much candy as I could, stuffing as much candy as I possibly could. And so it was that insatiable need for something that I perceived on the outside that made me feel better. And that was as early as the age of like 6. I'm from a big Irish family. There was ubiquity of drinking, and we always socialized around alcohol, of course, but there was also the propensity in an Irish family to not talk about anything. And so you have this combination of not talking about things, stuffing your feelings, and then in my experience, personally, I needed to stuff things in to make me feel better. But I always sought external affirmation and external substances. And then when I discovered Boone's Farm, which was a sugary based wine, which I loved, I couldn't believe it existed, and cigarettes, I was off and running. And I really, even though I played varsity sports and was always really athletic, I always made time for that behavior, which was incredibly demoralizing because it became such a focus that I made a lot of choices in my life about who I would hang around with and who I wouldn't hang around with based on what their behavior was. I was always able to bounce back. I was always able to work through a hangover, as my years went on, and I found that more wine made you feel better. And I think it's funny because in this day and age of drug addiction, and I see a lot of young people with substance use disorder, they didn't have the same long runway that a good old-fashioned alcoholic has. So the good old-fashioned alcoholic can go for years dressing up every day, quelling the hangover with whatever potions, and then fighting through it. And I've heard people say that alcoholism is like a house full of termites. It will erode over time, whereas drug addiction and substance use disorder is like a house on fire, where there's no runway. And so I believe that my experience, especially of blackouts, which happened as early as like my 20s, not knowing what happened the night before, and then having to have people dreadfully tell you the next day what your night before had included. And it was demoralizing and embarrassing. And I felt like I carried that shame. So it was guilt, shame, and remorse, the three amigos. And in my experience, just like when I was a child, I would ingest as much as I could in order to feel this sense of relief or feel better, and then lie about it. When I share about my own recovery story, I always am grateful for the experience of blackouts, frankly, which really was scary to me because I did not remember. I literally don't remember a lot of my 20s, which is tough to report. And I lived a huge life. I was working in New York City in the investment banking world, and going to these great parties and Studio 54. And in December 13th, 1997 was a night that kind of brought all of the behaviors of an alcoholic woman into play, and ended with being left alone the next day and kind of abandoned by my family right before Christmas, and rightly so. And I was a demoralized heap. And so all I could do was pull out the phone book and look for help. And I did that by myself. And then my father, God bless him, walked me into a rehab facility and brought me there. So it became very clear that I had a problem, and I denied it and tried to find every way around it because it was all I wanted to do. So to be faced with this idea now of a life that I wouldn't drink, I used to say I would rather be dead than not drunk. That's a pretty sad thing to say, but that was my mantra. And so I would say, come on, let's keep going, put the pedal to the metal. There's no reason to stop or slow down. And all the while I would drive with my son in the back seat to go get more wine and cigarettes at the store. It's only around the corner. But I really made decisions that were really risky. So in my recovery, which started then and has remained continuous ever since, thank God, I have had the best of times and the worst of times. I've gone through divorce. I've gone through being a single mom, head of household, on food stamps. It was just an emblem of how hard it was for me to put my life together. But I did it one day at a time, one step at a time, one great women friendship at a time. And over these years, I decided, okay, I need to become more self-reliant in all of this. And so I was volunteering at the jail in bringing in some words of recovery, and found that there were a lot of young people who are underemployed, especially in early recovery, where they too had never had the experience of continual employment. And so I thought if I could find a job for these guys better than what they're being offered through the pre-release setting, maybe I could help them connect to a construction job or outcomes that would be more enriching for them over time, especially as they get out of jail and prison. And in Maine, by the way, most people who are incarcerated are there because of behavior related to or derivative of substance use disorder in some way, shape, or form. So my life these days has become profoundly service-oriented in that I started a business to provide economic viability for everybody who finds themselves sidelined in life because of their behavior. And we all have to accept, I had to accept that I was an alcoholic and I had a serious medical condition. I was able to survive all of the things I put myself through as an active alcoholic. And now on this side of it, I'm able to apply my strengths of resilience, my strengths of the tenacity that I demonstrate to myself and my self-care, really, in the end. I was my least priority growing up, and now I have become my priority. So I've found peace there. And I wish peace to everybody in these difficult times, but don't do it alone. Find people to be with and connect to, because we are stronger together.
So if you're talking to somebody right now who's really struggling, what would be a suggestion for them?
There are many resources available, and I'm happy to share them. I know that Journey Magazine represents a lot of the organizations that are available same day, but it's literally to not suffer in silence. I found hope where I least expected it. I found it in the church basements, not in the church. I found it where you didn't meet on your resume and all your great accolades and how your kids are doing. You met it among people that said, me too. When I ended up in a church basement with other people who had that same reckless behavior, that's where I felt peace. So it wasn't about my resume and how great I was. It was about how broken I felt. It turned it all right around. And so rather than aspiring for all these great things that one day I was met with empathy and kindness and someone that understood exactly how I felt. I never felt like I would find a place to call safe. I was always on the run. And so to be so excited to find that place, it's just been an unbelievable journey.